Hey, everybody. This is Robert with the Red Lettuce, and I'm here with our co-host tonight, Eric and Mitch. How's it going, guys?
Hi, it's good.
Eric,
Hi, hi guys. So glad to see all of you today.
let me just start out, if I may, by saying, well, first of all, did you guys see Bill Maher? Did you see the show, his show on Friday night? It was kind of surprising what he had to say about animal agriculture and Chinese wet markets and the connection and all that stuff. It was quite amazing. And it got a lot of like social media virality. Like it kind of went all over the place. So there was that. And then on Monday, Tyson, who has been closing plants, Smithfield's been closing plants. The meat industry is really kind of showing its true colors through this pandemic, isn't it? Because all of these workers are testing positive now. So a lot of these plants, big plants, are shutting down. So Tyson came out with this full page ad in the New York Times, which was basically, to me, like a piece of propaganda directed at the public, like the educated New York Times reader, saying, if you don't fucking support us with the billions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies, we will tank the food industry and you won't have food on the table. That's basically kind of like the fear-mongering tactic they were using. Did you guys happen to see any of those two things?
Yeah, I did. I really dislike Bill Maher with a passion, but he did make a good point when he talked about the connection between the wet markets and animal agriculture and the Tiger King film.
Right.
I was that segment last Friday or the Friday before?
It was, to my knowledge, it was last Friday,
Okay.
like the Friday that just passed.
Okay. Because I have seen something about Bill Maher talking about China and the coronavirus, and it was horrible. It was really bad. He had a really bad take on it, and it made me very angry because it was just more like dog whistles, and really I would have to rewatch that particular one to remember what it was that I had a problem with.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with both of you guys. Bill Maher has been really, like I can't watch him most of the time. Like
Terrible.
the only reason why I watched this segment is because I saw so many people posting about it on Facebook and social media. I was like, okay, I guess it's a 4-minute segment. I guess I should watch it because everyone's like talking it up so much, and it was really amazing in how he delivered the message. It doesn't mean I want to go back and watch his show.
No.
Really,
I mean, he's just
he's
an example of
talked about.
he's just an example of like a broken clock can be right twice a day.
Yeah.
He reminds me a little bit of well, actually, kind of Tommy Lahren reminds me of him a little bit because they're just really loud and really wrong.
Wrong
a lot of
the
time.
Except about that one clip that I saw.
And I think
was good. That's it.
Which one?
The one that Robert's referring to about how he made the connection between animal agriculture, wet markets, and the Tiger King film. He really he drove the point home there, and I think.
What was the point he was driving home?
Well, the point he was making, I think, which was a good point that needs to be made, is that we say the problem is over there in China or somewhere else, just like the Republican talking points. Lindsey Graham and some of the other Republicans that have said, oh, we've got to close down those Chinese wet markets. Oh, but then, it stops there, right? And then, so what we're doing to animals and how we raise animals here isn't even like considered part of the problem. So I like the way he connected those things. And and said, what we have here has potentially created a far, like, the coronavirus pandemic could look like a walk in the park compared to what potentially could happen in terms of antibiotic resistance and all of the things that farming here has created. And so it was an intelligent piece by a person like Eric said. He, a couple of times he'll hit the mark, and then all the other times you're like, oh, no,
Yeah.
please, no. So yeah, I'm not turning him into a hero or anything. I'm just saying, okay, you know what? You got it right that time. I'll give you credit for that.
Right.
Enough said.
Give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right.
We gotta be for the truth, no matter who says it. If it's true, it's true.
Right.
That's kind of how I felt watching the debates when Mike Bloomberg was talking about China, and he was like the only one who wasn't using the Red Scare kind of language when talking about China. He said we have to work with China, and almost everybody else was like, oh, we've got to deal with China, and we all know what that means. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, and I found myself thankful that somebody was saying that at the presidential debate, but I felt myself gagging because it was Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, right. By the way, good way into my story. Lori Lightfoot wanted to endorse Bloomberg for president. Can you believe that?
Yeah, she's a class.
Her candidate. Like before he tanked, she actually had all these wonderful things to say about him before she officially endorsed Biden. I think that's just I'm sorry, but she is such a cheater. Like the platform and the policies that she was elected on, and look at her now. She's worse than Rahm Emanuel. I'm sorry. The story that came out that I found fascinating was came out by ProPublica last week, which always hits amazing stories and doesn't, some of the best investigative journalism I think we have. And so what happened is, like, some leaked audio came out from aldermen and her. And so my ward alderman, Andre Vasquez, asked a question. He was like, I have people that are going to rent strike, and we need to know what your position is if you're going to help renters in this pandemic, or because I have people that are ready to strike. And so I just wanted to play this like little bit of audio. It's like a 2-minute audio, so you can get a sense of like what her response was like. Is that cool?
Let's hear it.
Yeah, okay. I want to hear it.
Thank you, man. You're putting this together. I want to be noted for someone that wants a CPS briefing call like we have at the departments. But my question is that we're about 2 days from the first of the month, being 5 days to the latest. Can we get regular or potentially daily updates as our communications with the state as it pertains to rent or mortgage freezes? Because I've got people ready to rent strike, so I need to figure out what's going on.
I want to respond to your question.
I guess it was a request for daily updates as communication between us and the state about housing.
We'll talk to you about that offline. I'm not sure that's possible. Right. As you might imagine, the governor has and his team have a range of different priorities that are going on, as do we. And to take time to do a daily update on probably hundreds of conversations that are taking place, it really isn't feasible, given the number of things that we've all got on our plate and trying to get done. And we are telling you that this is a priority, that we're in constant conversation with the governor and his team on a range of issues. Our biggest priority, obviously, is making sure that we've got hospital beds. And rent assistance is something that is a conversation that's going on. But I just can't commit to documenting every single conversation that we're having. on a range of issues. That's just not feasible. And candidly, given all of the things that we're doing, the fact that we've got people that have been working literally 30 days straight, I don't think that that's a great use of our time. If you've got specific questions, certainly direct them to IGA.
So that's it, guys.
Wow. People's homes and, people's living situations aren't important, I guess.
Right. Getting kicked out of your house. Oh, well. Sorry, we've got hospital beds, but you could get kicked out of your house, and that's just not a conversation we can have right now.
Huh. Amazing.
I thought
It's
so.
not feasible. It's not feasible to. How is that not a priority? They haven't like completely just outright banned evictions, right? From what I understand, like there's a bunch of loopholes, but they haven't outright banned it in the city of Chicago.
I know for a fact that eviction process is on hold in terms of like commercial evictions, like to evict a commercial tenant, but I don't know about residential.
Of course.
Right? Because this is a pro-business administration to the fault. And you know how I know that? Because I got an email this morning from the commissioner of buildings, the one that gave the permit to demo the smokestack that polluted the air in Little Village. The same person who basically gave the green light to that told us that they are not going to do anything about a slaughterhouse. They're going to protect the business license of a slaughterhouse over all of these other business owners in the area and residents who hate this business and do not want to see them reopen. They're going to protect their business license. They're just like, this administration is pro-business, but in all the wrong ways that you can imagine that I've seen.
I mean, this just shows, Lori Lightfoot proves every day that she sides with the business community and not the working class people of Chicago. She's obviously not, she does not care about people's living situations. I was at a caravan protest over the weekend called Cancel the Rents, which is organized by the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And, this is totally in her power to cancel people's rents and mortgages during the duration of the pandemic. And this is a choice, on a local, state, and federal level not to do that. And just show where these people lie. These people are our class enemies. Lori Lightfoot is one of them.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting also to me, the contradiction of pro-business and capitalist governments. They have conditioned us to associate things like genocide with socialist governments and communist governments. And then we have examples with the smokestack where it's decreasing the air quality. And this is not an isolated thing. We are poisoning the environment all the time. The Keystone Pipeline, a big example of that. And Canada is very much involved. I think Canada gets a free pass. They're all the friendly neighbors, and Justin Trudeau is so hot, but they totally forget that they're just as complicit in colonizing Africa with all their mineral companies and this Keystone Pipeline. And it's that kills the environment, it kills people, it kills animals, and I don't know. I never hear any of that growing up in school. It's always socialism bad. Stalin killed this, Mao killed that, and the number gets bigger every day.
Yeah. One quick thing to add to that was a couple of weeks ago when an example of this is when Governor Pritzker bent over backwards to thank the McDonald's Corporation for donating 4,000 masks, right? This company is responsible for some of the worst practices in on the planet, and he's thanking them for like some masks, like as if that's what they, you know, their altruism is all that defines them. It's just, you're going to see this in the neoliberals. It's actually more repugnant to see it in the neoliberals than it is to see it in the Republicans, because we know what to expect from them, right?
Right.
Anyway, so Mitch, what do you have today?
So I really wanted to talk about North Korea, because I'm seeing a lot of these stories about Kim Jong-un possibly dead, or, you know, a vegetable or something from some botched heart surgery. And the thing that really sticks out to me the most is that every article I read says the source, like, it's unverifiable. They can't verify it. But the headlines are always, oh, Kim Jong-un. I have an example, and we should link it in the video when we post it. But the New York Post put out this article. I'll just read the title of it for you. U.S. reportedly has contingency plans in place if Kim Jong-un dies. Right?
Oh, you know, just the, you know, the ultra-capitalist rogue state that totally destroyed their country, you know, totally decimated 30% of, or 20% of their population.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what I'm sure they're hoping for the United States to really get things together there after.
Yeah. But here's my favorite part about this. Okay, I'm going to read from the article. The U.S. government has contingency plans in place in the event North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un should die after reports that his health was in grave condition. Sources discussed the plans, but urged caution about the veracity of the reports, which claimed Kim is in bad shape after a cardiovascular procedure, Fox News reported. Those plans include the possibility of a mass-scale humanitarian crisis inside the hermit nation, such as a famine, according to the report. So they've got like hyperlinked an article. I'm just gonna click it, and we're just gonna go down a rabbit hole of manufacturing consent here. Because every article I clicked on after this was like, oh, sources say, and they never ever named the source. My internet is taking for
really just like, what is the contingency plan? Go
right, and
is there resource?
right.
Yeah.
What is the contingency plan? Exactly. Yeah. Okay, here this hyperlink is to another New York Post article called "North Korea's Kim Jong-un in grave danger after surgery, reports say." The U.S. intelligence agencies are receiving information that North Korean leader, that North Korean leader is in grave danger after undergoing surgery. The outlet cited an unnamed U.S. official with direct knowledge of the matter. And then the next paragraph, it says, a South Korean government official told the country's Yonhap news agency that Kim was not seriously ill, contradicting the report.
You know, just reliable sources as always, right?
Right.
We haven't seen this playbook before, right? No.
Never. And the crazy thing is like both of these articles, the title like seriously implies that he's either dead, going to die, or like we need to expect something big to come out of North Korea, and that we got to be ready for it. Because those people need our help, and we need to be ready with humanitarian aid. And I'm loading this CNN article now that's hyperlinked in the...
so we can finally take over North Korea, which we've wanted to do since the 1950s, right?
Yeah, after we carpet bombed Pyongyang and massacred many of their people on the north and south.
20% of their population. It's crazy.
Yeah. and it's just, when I read these articles, every time like a big event like this happens, there's always like these, they're dog whistles for imperialism. Sources say, unnamed sources. What is, like, who are these people? Where do they live? How do we have contact with them? And what would be so wrong with telling us their name?
Right.
Well, this is just like, this is the level of TMZ style, like,
Right.
journalism, if you can call it that. This is just rumors. This is just like, this is totally sensational. You know, Page 6, E-News, sensational rumors. Like, none of this is verifiable. You know, this is just so typical of how our news, our corporate news media is totally manufactured and is not in the business of actually providing any news.
Right. And I've seen already so quickly, so many, they're talking about Kim Jong-un's sister being prepared for power. What was her name? Kim Yo-jong, that's her name. And she's become like a meme similar to, you know, Lori Lightfoot. There's so many memes now. She's a, you know, feared and respected leader. And I've seen a couple things where people commenting, oh, isn't she a war criminal? And that just made me think, from what war?
Exactly.
What war?
What country have they invaded?
Right, like literally name a single country North Korea has invaded and whose people they've slaughtered. They haven't invaded any. And it's the same with all these other countries who had humanitarian crises. You know, there could be bad things happening there, but the alternative we provide is so much worse. Bolivia just banned free speech. Their interim government banned free speech and is pushing off elections.
Wow.
This is the same lady who's got tweets from, you know, just a few years ago saying that just were satanic and needed to be eradicated or some shit like that. And I just, how do liberals grapple with this? And you know, they were like, oh, well, we've got to, you know, the Bolivian elections were fraudulent. We've got to, you know, you shake your finger at it, and then these things happen, and they forget it ever happened, and they forget they ever cared about it. And now we've got, you know, people having hot takes on the Kim family now, and how they're murderous, evil people, and we shouldn't be idolizing them because they're war criminals. And I even found some interesting things from Mashable that I thought just really made me laugh. There's this Mashable article called "We regret to inform you that people are standing Kim Jong-un's sister." So the first paragraph of this is, maybe it's that we've all been in quarantine for too long and some people have nothing better to do, or maybe it's that she would rather be the world's first known female dictator. Blah, 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 blah. The internet sexualizing everything, blah, 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 blah. But unfortunately, we're here. Twitter is horny for Kim Yo-jong. And I've just seen a lot of Kim Jong-un's sister, and they never put her name in the title also. I think that's really interesting. But even more interesting is when you search for Justin Trudeau on Mashable, you get these articles, hot dads, Justin Trudeau and Barack Obama hold a baby. and just a couple more like that are just like,
it's so ironic because, you know, I wonder how many babies Obama killed with all of his bombs that he
right. right.
He's such a humanitarian person with all his bombs that he dropped on, you know, hospitals, schools, and homes, right?
Exactly. And all these socialist countries sending doctors to other countries and sending supplies to other countries. Like Cuba is sending doctors all over the place, and we're dropping bombs on people.
Right. Cuba is exporting doctors and all over the world, while the U.S. Exports sanctions and bombs
Mm-hmm.
during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Kind of tells you, it's kind of really just says it all.
It's so predictable. It's so blatant.
Yeah, and I saw a hot take today on Rising with Crystal Ball and Sagar. They really had a hot take. They were saying, it's a dictatorship, it's an authoritarian, dictatorship. They repeated all these bullshit stories about how Kim Jong-un killed or purged his family members, and killed one of them with a chemical weapon of some sort. And it's just like, maybe you should do some research before you go on air and spew this bullshit propaganda that we hear everywhere else in the mainstream media. I mean, I thought there's supposed to be some kind of like alternative to it, but they sound just like them. They are repeating these cartoonish, despicable lies about the DPRK. And they never talk. They never talk about how authoritarian the South Korea is. They have something called the National Security Law, and if people violate that, they are put in prison for a long period of time. If they get caught, saying anything positive about North Korea, or anything that's related to Marx and Marxism, they can be in big trouble. Like, they have free speech issues there. And Sagar also mentioned he talked to a defector from North Korea, and what he doesn't understand, I don't know if he knows this or not, but these so-called defectors are totally bogus, and they are kept, and once these people like defect, they are kept in these facilities in South Korea for long periods of time. They are brainwashed, they are held against their will, and they are pretty much brainwashed into doing their bidding and spreading propaganda and lies about North Korea. They go on TV shows and spread misinformation, and then the U.S. eats it up.
And they get paid too. I've read a lot of them actually end up going back to North Korea anyway.
So some of them can't even go back. Some of them, their passports are like flagged, like they won't let them through. They won't let them see their families. They say that, but they promise them that they will, and they don't. They lie.
The South Korean government won't let them.
The South Korean government won't, right?
Interesting. That sucks.
Yeah. So I think they should, do a little research before they go on air and spread bullshit.
Yeah, seriously. Never mind the fact that South Korea had plenty of socialist movement happening after World War II, and they wanted to reunite with the North.
Yes, most people, it's very popular. They want a united country, but the U.S. is standing in the way of that.
Yeah. Could you imagine a country voting in to be communist? We want to be with the communists, and the United States is like, no, you can't do that. That's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go about this for like another whole hour, probably. I just think it's really, really interesting that people only focus on the Kims. I don't think people realize that North Korea has an actual government. They hold elections, and they're probably better than ours. I mean, we have a representative democracy. They have a direct democracy. Who's authoritarian? I mean, New York just canceled the Democratic primary.
Yeah, and also they have housing is a human right there. How
You're right.
exactly.
And here we are in Chicago, like, people are freaking out about being evicted.
There's already 80,000 homeless people in Chicago. 30% of the people in Chicago couldn't pay their rents.
Yeah.
Who's the authoritarian? The United States is the only authoritarian state. It's the leading authoritarian dictatorship, not North Korea.
Mm-hmm. And I also just think it's kind of racist the way that we posture ourselves to be like our media high and mighty above.
We know better.
Right. Even Venezuela, they're lying. We know that they did this bad thing. They're lying about it. You should trust us because we keep you safe. Like it's just so aggravating, and it's scary. It's scary. Right. Learning to undo that liberal conditioning was kind of a terrifying process. And I don't know, now every time like some big event happens, we drop a bomb, there's a humanitarian crisis, I go through this like period where I question everything I believe, I get inside my head, because I don't want to like make excuses for war crimes and human rights violations, I want to be on the right side. I want to be on the side of the people. And then the longer it stews and the more information I get, it's the same thing every single time. This should be so predictable. It's almost instinctive now for me to have that, like this gut reaction. I'm just like, oh, I'm being lied to. I think I know I'm being lied to. I don't like that. I don't like that.
Well, yeah, we are. I mean, we can never believe what we hear from the mainstream news circuit because, they have really deep connections with the national security state, and they lie all the time because war is a racket. And we really need to start getting behind this idea, what Lenin called revolutionary defeatism. And that means we need to be for the defeat of the imperialist empire of the United States and every single imperialist endeavor that they engage in.
I think that's a great segue for you to take it from here, Eric.
Okay. Well, I really want to kind of touch on a topic that we haven't gotten a chance to really go deep into, and it's Richard Wolff wrote an article recently in Common Dreams about the need for work cooperatives during this or COVID-19 pandemic, because this pandemic is really exposing the inability, capitalism's inability to prepare and provide people with security, health, and safety during these pandemics. So Richard Wolff points out in his article, he touches on 8 sectors. He says that the food, housing, medical, military, and energy and transportation, and several other sectors really need to be detached from for-profit private enterprises. And they really need to be in the hands of the workers. They need to be in the hands of a democratic workplace. So Richard Wolff explains in his article that the lessons of the coronavirus outbreak was and is this: the efficient solution for a viral pandemic was to produce and stockpile, but the profitable solution for private capitalists was neither to produce nor stockpile. Efficiency in meeting basic social needs contradicts efficiency in the capitalist pursuit of private profit. Therefore, all 8 listed sectors will need to become non-capitalist government obligations that will entail producing and stockpiling the appropriate commodities as needed for each sector. And he goes on to say that production in and for these 8 basic sectors will be done by worker cooperatives, where enterprise decisions are made democratically and conjointly by 3 groups. The first is the collective of worker cooperators. The second is a group of elected representatives of the consumers of the worker co-op products. The third is a group of elected representatives of the residential locality where the worker co-op is located. And I think that's really important because no one's going to want to pollute their own environment, their own neighborhood, their own city, their own state. No one's going to want to be for that. And a lot of these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are privately managed and owned, they don't give a shit about the people that live within the within the confines of where their corporation is held. You know, they'll pollute the air and water depending on what they're making because it's profitable to do so. And those people that, you know, control these decisions and make these decisions don't live in these neighborhoods or these communities where these corporations are located. They're living mansions far away, and the people have to live with them. And if people have to live with the decisions that they are making in the workplace, they're not going to want to pollute and, you know, damage their environment. And you know, again, you know, we're seeing a lack of PPE and ventilators, things like that, is because there's a medical industrial complex that's controlled by private corporations, and they were not the private profit motive gets in the way of preparing for these pandemics and providing for people that need medical attention. And as long as this for-profit capitalist system continues, we will never be prepared, and people will continue to die because death is profitable in a capitalist society. But in a socialist one, it's people's health and people's needs are put before profit. There is no profit motive in a social society. It's about cooperation and what's needed in society. So I just wanted to touch on, you know, worker cooperatives and why they're so important today, and why we really need a worker cooperative sector of our government that funds worker cooperatives, because these types of government sectors do exist. Like, for example, in Italy, Richard Wolff talks about this, that they do have a system where people can come together. Like, if you have a group of like 8 or 9 people that are unemployed and they want to start a business together, the government there will provide them a lump sum of their unemployment money or checks, so they can start up their business together. We don't have that in the United States. And I think I think it's really interesting, you know, that our capitalist system, or the people that advocate for the free market and competition, wouldn't they want this competition? I thought that's what capitalism is supposed to be about, is about, you know, survival of the fittest, right? You know, who the winners and losers. And I think this would be a really good example of this so-called free market competition, to have a worker co-op sector to go against the private enterprises and see who really wins. Because I think people would really choose the worker cooperative ones.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, you know, as someone who's been like independently employed for most of my life, and, you know, like since the late 90s, being an independent contractor is a very lonely place to be, and you feel like you have no safety net, and you know, you pay for your own health insurance, and you don't have a community, you don't have a support structure. It's like either you decide you're going to go that independent contractor route, or you go and you work for, you know, somebody else, and then you get your benefits or whatever benefits you can get. But there's nothing like a cooperative. Like I could imagine a cooperative that would support independent contractors, like what you're talking about. That would be so beneficial.
Right. And again, you know, people in a worker cooperative enterprise, they're not going to pay themselves dirt wages and give profits to a few people at the top. That's not rational. That's not how it works. The workers make the profits and generate the workers generate the profits because they're making the product. So they should decide how it's produced, where it's produced, and what to do with those profits, not a select few of people that have no contribution to that, and
Right.
take the bigger piece, the biggest piece of the pie home, and leave the rest with crumbs and lack of benefits or no benefits, and a very unsecure job. You know, people, you know, why should your job security be in control of one person or a few people that can just decide whether you stay or go, because it's
Right.
you know.
Have you
profitable.
seen this documentary from the early 2000s? I think it's called The Women of Brooklyn. Have you heard about it?
The women of what? Say it again.
The Women of Brooklyn.
No.
It's pretty sure they're Argentina.
Wait, say that again.
Pretty sure they're in Argentina. Women of Brooklyn.
Okay.
Let me double check that real quick. Women of, yeah, Argentina. Okay, so it's about these factory workers who they work at a garment and textiles factory, and the Argentinian economy kind of collapses, and so they start, like, their profits start dropping, and so the bosses leave, and not only do they leave, they get a government escort out of the country, and these workers, they keep working, they organize and they keep working, and they save the company, and they start making lots and lots of money, and they share responsibilities, they share the profits from the things that they're selling, and so they develop a workers co-op, and it's really cool to see that in action, in practice, happening in real life within the past couple of decades, because people think that it's so unrealistic, but it's so quick, it's so easy. Managers ain't shit, you know.
Right.
They're supposed to manage where we're getting paid and labor, right? They're not supposed to be making more than workers do, because workers are the ones who are generating the wealth, right? And these factory workers understand that clearly. And so after, of course, the economy recovers and they see this factory's doing really, really well, guess who comes crawling back, right? These factory owners come back and they're like, oh, we want our factory back. And so then you've got the Peronist cops, you know, trashing the factory and making their lives hell. And I think the film ends with these people like camped out in the street, and there's thousands of them, and they sleep in the street for like a month in front of this factory. It's really, really good. You should totally watch it.
It's like Occupation, like Occupy Wall Street or something.
Yeah, but it's hardcore. I mean, these women are badass.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely like to watch that. And, you know, I think, like I said earlier, I think this coronavirus is really exposing the fact that workers really do run the world. We make the world run. And these capitalists, these business owners don't, and they need us more than we need them. We don't need managers. We don't need bosses. We don't need people at the top. We don't need boards of directors. They don't produce anything. They're the parasites, and the
Yes.
workers are the ones that make shit go. We make shit run, and so we should run the world.
Yeah. And I think that goes back. We can tie that back into authoritarianism, right? With like the things that you were describing, or just a few minutes ago, are totally authoritarian.
It's a corporate.
But the Soviets had the power to recall an election if they were unhappy with their elected leaders,
right?
And they had a good resistance to the United States. That is authoritarian because the capitalists are afraid of power. The ruling class is afraid of collective power because they know once it's gone, it's really hard to get back. And unfortunately, we helped undo a lot of that work that they did. But I think that's really, I mean, it's like when they say, oh, their government is authoritarian, what they're really, they're saying what they mean. We're authoritarian. Pro-business government is authoritarian because people don't have decisions. I, as a worker, don't have any say in where my labor goes, how that money is spent, and where the profits go. They all go to the shareholders. That is authoritarian.
Yeah, right. And I will say the most authoritarian concept to me is a huge entity that controls so much of resources and wealth that is accountable to no one.
Right.
At least when it comes to, elected officials or public officials, we can somehow, in most cases, even in some, authoritarian states, hold them accountable to a certain point. But with like these private corporate leaders, nobody knows who they are. No one knows where they live. No one knows where their money is in offshore accounts. No one knows anything about these companies or individuals. And
I want to leave you with one final thought, and that is, if the North Korean government is so authoritarian and so bad and so evil, wouldn't the world's largest military overthrow it? Anyway, I'm Mitchell with the Red Lettuce, here with my hosts Eric and Robert, and we bid you adieu.
Thank you, everyone.